So I want to tell a story about something that happened almost a year ago from now. It was in April. Yes, it occurred in April. It was an extremely stupid idea of something I did. Um, so basically what I did was in April, I didn't work a job at the time. I was 17 and I really didn't have as much freedom as I did now. I wasn't legally able to stay at a hotel, and I was just thought, "Oh, why don't I just go have some fun?" And at the time, uh, it was kind of like, "Oh, you only live once. I'm gonna do whatever I want now because once I get a job and all that, I won't have the same freedom as I do now." So I decided to take Greyhound bus from South Florida all the way to New Orleans, and I had a connection in Atlanta. Yes, you heard that right. I did that. Oh no, let me tell you, that is a story. Before I get into it, I'll just say I did this really last minute. Just I did it over the week. The week, yeah, because my mom was gone during the week and then she came back in the weekend and I was like, fingers crossed, hopefully she doesn't find out. But one thing I will say is I do realize it could have ended up much worse than it did, and I will get into that. But it was scary. I'll say that. Before I get into the story as a whole, I'll describe more of the situation. My mom was visiting her boyfriend in another state, and that she wasn't home, so it gave me the motivation to head out and go. The only so the only issue was my mom has a roommate who lives with us, and it's not just like she just lives here. She and her talk, and I'm pretty sure because if spoiler alert, I was caught about my mom found out I did all of this, and I highly suspect it was because of my roommate, because my mom has no other way of finding out that I'm not home. Uh, okay. And my when I got back, my computer was taken away and my mom wasn't here, so obviously my roommate had something to do with that, but that's different. In my eyes, when it comes to the whole point of doing something like this, let me sit up 'cause in my eyes, when it comes to something like this, yeah, maybe if I was a parent, I don't think I would let my kid take a 41-hour bus ride. Even at 17, I mean, at 18, there's nothing I can do about it, but at 17, I would highly discourage it. And I would say, just fly. As 2 months before that, I flew to Chicago and I slept in the airport, and that was actually okay, believe it or not. I was caught. Um, my mom found out about that also. That's a completely different story. But that was okay. Sleeping in the airport was actually relatively comfortable if you sleep on the air side. And I honestly, nothing, I wasn't really putting myself that much or that far into risk compared to this. Anyways, let me now tell the Greyhound story. So I booked the ticket, and it said I was going to get there the next day at 12 o'clock, I believe. No, no, much earlier than that, at 8 AM, and my flight was supposed to and I booked the flight back, from New Orleans back to where I live um, at 5 PM. right? So I thought, I'm gonna take this bus, and it was originally only supposed to be 24 hours, which that's already a long time. But I, for some reason, thought I could do it. Don't ask me why. Because and the reason why I thought I could do it because I was thinking, oh, I already slept the night in an airport twice, 2 nights. You don't know, the night before, the night I got there to Chicago and the night after, and that wasn't that bad. So I thought, okay, I've already spent the night in an airport before. I can sleep on a bus. That was my logic. Boy, was it different. Boy, was I wrong. So I booked the ticket anyways. I woke up in the morning. I took my local bus route to the Greyhound station, and the first thing I noticed was how ghetto the station was. There was this guy walking around the station asking for I believe cigarettes. I just said no. I wasn't really all that scared as I knew this was going to be a long trip. I didn't realize then either that screwed up. I just thought, oh, maybe it's my stations or my city station's just not all that nice. Because my city's not the city or the big city for my metro area, I'm not going to specify what it is not the nicest city. So I just thought, okay, maybe that's just here. But in the meantime, at least where my station is, it isn't in a terrible area. So I walked to a place next door to use the restroom, drink out of the water fountain before I went on this extremely long trip. And then the bus came. The bus came on time. And from here, I took the bus to Orlando. And then that's when the first thing went wrong. So I'll tell you the roads now that now we're to this part. We were on I-95 and everything was going fine. And then we switched to the turnpike as my first connection was in Orlando. And the minute we got on the Florida's turnpike, there was a huge traffic or there was a lot of traffic. It wasn't even moving. And it stayed like this for around 2 to 3 hours. Now, I'll tell you this, I've well, with parents, I travel on Turnpike a lot. I've it back in 6th and 7th grade. Sorry, I'm going by grades, but I just can't really remember what age I was. Um, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, ninth grades. I traveled on the turnpike a lot because that road takes me to where my dad lives. And I've never seen anything like that at all on the turnpike. So this is a really rare coincidence, but it was horrible for me because we were trapped there 3 hours and I was supposed to make my bus connection in Atlanta. Um, I believe there was a 2 hour or a window for it. So finally we got going. We got to the bus station in Orlando, and bef- the bus ride wasn't all that bad. Honestly, I was still funny enough. I was thinking, oh, I sorry, second my cat. It wasn't all that bad. It wasn't all that bad. Um, I was just stressing out because I knew I was gonna miss my connection, and I didn't know if there was any other sort of way I could make this trip, or how I was gonna get back to South Florida. So I got to the station. I was still determined to go to New Orleans, and I waited at the help desk, and everybody else was waiting too because they all missed their connection to Atlanta. We missed it, obviously. And it took forever. The lady was who knows where, and she finally came out. She took care of the people in front of me, and she took care of me. And I got my bus rescheduled um to a different route. that took even longer to get to Atlanta. I went back east into Jacksonville and up to Savannah, and then it went towards Atlanta. So that was just even more a longer trip than I already planned for, and I was not excited about that. So I sat at that station for, I believe, an hour or 2, and I wanted to get some food, and the food place in that station was closed, so I decided to go walk out and find a place outside the bus station, and I did not realize how bad of a neighborhood that was. It was horrible. I was scared, I'll say that. I walked to the gas station, there was let's just say I walked as fast to the gas station as I could. I remember I got some Spanish food, and then I walked back, but it was okay, honestly. Just wait till you hear what happens next. But I made my bus to Atlanta, and now that's when things start to get really sketchy. The bus from South Florida to Orlando wasn't that bad. There were some sketchy people on it, but it's stuff that I'm used to. Now this bus that went to Jacksonville and Jacksonville to Atlanta, this bus was so freaking sketchy, and it was a night bus. When we went to Jacksonville and we had, that was just, it was usual, but when we got to Jacksonville, people had to everybody had to sit next to each other because there were no available seats. And I remember there were people like screaming and yelling, like, "Yeah, I don't want to do this. Who the heck is wrong with you?" And there was people like yelling at the bus driver and stuff. And then we got to Savannah, and this guy had a bag stolen, and then the bus driver was like, "Oh, what? There's nothing I can do about it." And, no, his bag was stolen from the baggage area, on the bus, and that's below the bus. So I assume that somebody must have took all his stuff and stole or took his bag onto the bus and stole it, and the bus driver has no way of really preventing that. So if you ever do decide to make a horrible decision and travel on Greyhound, don't take a big bag that you're not gonna be able to carry with you. That's because I only took a very little bag since it was a little trip, and I just kept that with, like, glued to me the entire time. Not literally glued, but I held on. I kept it very close to me. I used the bag as a pillow, and it helped a lot. Um, but anyways, Uh, after Savannah, or even before Savannah, I was trying to get sleep. And keep in mind, I was on a bus already at that point for 12 hours. So I was feeling extremely exhausted. I started to feel a migraine building up. And on the way, I remember I believe the interstate was Interstate 16 that like travels from Savannah to Macon. I actually got some good sleep. I did wake up time to time, but that freeway, there wasn't many cars on it, and it was very smooth, so it was easy to sleep on. And then we got to Macon and got on I-75, and then there was a bunch of cars again, and then the road got more rough, and it was harder to sleep. And I didn't take that into consideration before I booked this trip. I didn't realize how hard it is to sleep on a bus. It's harder than sleeping on an airplane. It's just not worth it. I Airplanes at least are relatively smooth unless there's turbulence. Imagine that, but if there's turbulence the entire time. And it's worse than a car even. Cars don't they stabilize much faster. You have to think or remember you're on this very large vehicle, and once one button hits, it kind of vibrates the whole bus. It's really hard. That's my key thing I'll let you know is it's extremely hard to get sleep. I think during that time, which that was the only time on the whole trip I really got some sleep, I slept probably, well, no, I got more. I'm getting to that. Probably for 2 hours max. And then we got into Atlanta, and the Atlanta Greyhound station was, oh my gosh, let me tell you about let me sorry, it's bothering me. Atlanta was insane. The It's scary. So, I got out of the bus, and most of the Greyhound stations usually have fences between the area outside of the station and in the station. This station did not. This station just virtually opened onto the street. So we're getting out. I have no idea where the entrance is, and I make a stupid decision to just walk towards the station, not wait for everybody else. And then to my right, across the street, all these homeless people are screaming at me. That's what it sounded like. And then this man in like a vest, he starts saying, "Hey, where are you going?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm going." I think I said I'm going to the station. He's like, "Oh," and I just walked. I just walked. I kind of ignored him because I did not want any part of that. At that point, I realized I should have stayed with the people, but it was too late then. And I walked to the station, and all the doors were locked. I couldn't get in, and I started knocking at the station, and I was like, "Fuck, I don't wanna get robbed out here." And, um, thankfully, somebody came and opened the doors, and but what I realized was where I was trying to enter and was actually the exit. That's why I should have just waited with the people, but stupid me. Anyways, I got in the station and I was sitting down. I believe I sat near, or it was a big station, but I sat and these people were sitting, or this guy sat next to me that I saw, or on the bus earlier, and there was other people, and we actually started talking. We actually had a pretty good conversation, believe it or not. Um, Actually, probably far better than the conversations I have with kids at school. We were just talking about, places, life, and everything. It was really interesting. But during that time when I was talking to those people, I found out something I shouldn't have. I found out that almost everybody riding the Greyhound was just getting out of prison. I didn't realize that. And that kind of made my heart like drop. I was like, "Holy shit, I'm with all the people that my parents, as a child, warned me to avoid, the criminals." I mean, again, I'm doing something crazy, but even at that, it's still realizing something like that, just fully realizing that is it's in it. It just hits you. But through that entire experience, it made me also realize that, and it's a crazy thing that for some people to realize, but not all people who go to prison are bad people. They're just like you and me. They're not crazy. They don't sound insane. They're just like you and me, and some of them might be even smarter than you and me, but you just don't realize it. It was one of the most eye-opening experiences I've ever experienced in my entire life. Yeah. Anyways, um, all of the with the positive comes the negative. Well, there was this right behind me was this phone charging station, and people just left their phones there charging onto the plugs. And there was these guys with vests that I think they were trying to pretend to be employees coming by every now and then, and they would just grab the phones off of just the entire phone and the charger, and they put them in this black bag, and they wouldn't just grab one, they would grab multiple, so you could obviously tell what they were doing. And the other creepy thing was there was the cops who would come in every now and they just had like these batons and guns on them. It was insane. um, I've seen videos in that bus station of people actually getting in fights, but not to my saw people arguing, but I didn't see any fights, thankfully. Anyways, what another thing in that station was, there was another bus going somewhere else, and they were saying, "This bus will be extremely late." And when I heard that, I realized Greyhound is extremely unreliable, and I've watched videos on it now, and I realized what I did was extremely stupid because sometimes, at least in some people's experiences, Greyhound can be 2 days late, 3 days late. So if the bus was 2 days late, I wouldn't have been able to get make my flight at all. I missed it. And I which brings me to the next point. Because I realized that if my bus got on time, my new scheduled bus, the only thing I would have been able to do in New Orleans was just, what is the word for it? Literally just go straight to the airport and fly back. I wouldn't have been able to experience the city or anything, which, spoiler, I wasn't. But anyways, I made a really, well, no, I guess I'd say smart decision in case the bus got delayed. But to change my flight, which costed $90 by the way, from the day I was supposed to fly out to the next day in the morning. So I did that. And I just thought, "Oh, I'll just sleep in the airport like I did in Chicago." Um, so anyways, my bus got on time, thank goodness, and I will say this, the bus from Atlanta to New Orleans was not sketchy at all. The people were all it was probably the least sketchy bus I rode the entire time. The people were extremely quiet and respectful. Um, to my memory, nobody was smoking on those buses. The last two, the one from South Florida to Orlando and Orlando to Atlanta, people were smoking galore. It was just, it smelled horrible. I wore my mask the entire time. But the one from the last one, people were the most relaxed out of any of them. And probably just because I'm getting away from Florida and Atlanta. Those places are known for being highly ghetto, and it was just nice to get away from that. And I got to go to Alabama, first time ever in that state. I remember Alabama was, I don't know, it was different. I really couldn't tell you too much about it, but I did get to see some parts of the state throughout my window. The only thing I do remember is we stopped in Montgomery for a stop, and Mobile, but in Montgomery, the downtown was extremely dead. There was nobody walking around, um, but it looked nice. Um, anyways, we went to Mobile, and when we were getting towards Mobile, that's when I had a headache, by the way, and the headache was getting really bad now because I was only running on 2 hours of sleep. And I also made a really dumb decision before to just pack, I believe it was like little chip bags. I didn't pack any real food. I think I did pack water. Um, and I needed a real meal. So I was getting sick, really sick. And I wanted food. None of the bus stops, so the bus stop that we stopped in Jacksonville, which that was a quick stop, there was a food place, but I didn't have enough time to get food because I was in the back of the line and the bus was ready to depart. Um, in Atlanta, there was no food place. There was just a vending machine. I just got a bag of chips. And then in Montgomery, there was nothing. It was too short of a stop. In Mobile, there was no food place at all. It was a short stop, and I was getting really sick, and did not want to puke. So I remember I went in that station, and I asked for any anti-nausea medicine, and they didn't have any. So I went in the bathroom, and I was so ready to puke, and I felt like shit. I honestly didn't know if I was able to make it to New Orleans. I didn't throw up in the bathroom. I got on the bus to New Orleans, and I had to throw up. So I went so there's a bathroom on, Greyhound, if you don't know. It's in the back of the bus. It's really small, you get barely any air in it, there's not even a sink to wash your hands, there's just a hand sanitizing station. And I threw up in that toilet. It was horrible, it was the worst and I do throw up a lot, because I get migraines, and when I get migraines, I throw up. So I've thrown up more times than I can count. But out of all the times I've thrown up, this is the worst. On a moving vehicle, it was horrible, and my seat was in the front of the bus, so after throwing up, I walked all the way back and sat in my seat, and I just remember I fell asleep because I didn't want to go through the pain at all, and then I woke up again, felt nauseous, walked to the back of the bus, threw up again, did the same thing over. Um, I barely that was the part of the drive or bus ride I was most excited for because I wanted to look around and see Mississippi and Louisiana, but I wasn't able to see any of it because how sick I was, and I couldn't even open my eyes at that point, besides to maneuver myself to the bathroom to puke. I puked on the bus 3 times. Then when we got to New Orleans, before I will say that, again, I will have to say the people on the bus were extremely respectful. Nobody was making mean comments or anything about me throwing up in the toilet. They were actually asking me if I was okay. I I just said yeah. Um Anyways, we got to New Orleans. I got off the finally I got off the bus and I was so sick that I threw up again. Then I walked after throwing up I walked to the I looked for a restaurant, but at that point I remember I was so sick that I didn't even want to eat. You know the feeling you throw up and you don't want to eat. That's what I was feeling. And crazy me, I was still determined to see New Orleans. Even being that sick, thrown up 4 times, and then I believe I threw up a fifth time in the bathroom. I was still determined to see the city. And by the way, you want to know how long that bus ride was? It was 41 hours with 2 hours of sleep. I was hurting that much, and I still wanted to see the city. I was still determined to. And so I walked to the trolley, and I was getting on the trolley to go, and then I remember I said, "I have to get out," and then I threw up again in the trolley station. I remember throwing up in a trash can. So this is number 6 time throwing up, and then I remember the train operator was even really or the trolley operator was really respectful. I have to say, even though I really didn't get to experience New Orleans the way I wanted to, the people were really nice to me. And it's a city I would definitely consider visiting again because nobody made fun of me throwing up or anything. I know people have really horrible stereotypes of the city, but honestly, uh, I didn't see it when I was there at least. Um, Anyways, I got on the next trolley and then um I rode it and I was pretty much like holding on to my stomach. I did not want to throw up on the trolley. I was just trying to get to a street where I could get off and I actually made it. I just remember I wasn't able to really look out the window or anything. I was trying to, but I was just so sick. I got to a stop on Canal Street, New Orleans, and I got off. And my goal was then to get some Pepto Bismol. I was like, if I can get some Pepto Bismol, I drink some Pepto Bismol, I'll be able to explore the city and I'll be able to check this off my bucket list. So I walked down the street, I puked twice, so we're like at 8 now, 8 times throwing up. And at this point, it's pretty much just that you're throwing up and nothing's coming out. So I'm at that point now. So I went to Walgreens and I got some Pepto Bismol and I started drinking it. And I remember at that point there was a lady, and the lady was saying, "Oh, I felt sick yesterday. I had to lay down all day." It's like, oh. Anyways, I drank the Pepto-Bismol, and I was like, "Okay, finally, hopefully I can explore the city," and I kept walking, and then I threw it all up. And then I threw up again after that, walking around down Canal Street, looking around and seeing the city, and I was really trying. I was trying so hard, and I think I got to a point where I didn't feel it. It started to go away a little bit, so I walked into the mall on Canal Street, and I went to use the bathroom, so I had to go really bad. And I remember I smelled, it kept saying, "Oh, this city smells so bad," but no, it was me smelling bad. I'll get to that later. Anyways, um, I wanted to film at some elevators in New Orleans, and since I was feeling a little bit better, and I sat down for a while too in that mall as I was trying to just like get the nausea to go away just somehow, and kept trying to drink some Pepto Bismol, but it wasn't work. It worked a little bit, I'll say that. So then I went to go film an elevator, and there's a video of this on YouTube, and it's called "I Tried to Go to New Orleans." Um, and I was started filming going up, and then I remember my stomach just couldn't handle it. So I believe there was people in the elevator, and they were going to a lower floor, and I just got off there and I stopped. I cut the video, and I realized I can't even film. I can't do anything. I wanted to walk down Bourbon Street. I saw Bourbon Street. I saw the people playing the trumpets, and I was planning to go back there and walk down Bourbon Street and try the good Cajun food, but I wasn't able to. So I went back down the elevator, and I ordered an Uber to the airport, and I knew this was gonna be hard, as the airport was a 40-minute Uber ride, and I knew I couldn't throw up. So, I waited for my Uber. I didn't think I threw up then. I took a video, I believe, just like me being in a picture of me being in New Orleans there. I got in my Uber, and somehow I didn't throw up. I just went to sleep in the Uber. I believe, yeah. I just like this the whole time, just like don't throw up, and I was just sleeping in. Yeah, I got to the airport. I really wanted to see that drive too because I have an interest in freeways and I want to see it, but again, I was so done at that point. Got out of the Uber car, puked, as you can expect. Then after that, um, I remember I just walked into the airport. I asked TSA if I was able to go in the gates, uh, and they said no. The gates are the air side closes and it reopens at 5 a.m. You're not able to enter until then. So I had to sleep on the other side. I forget what you call it. The side that's insecure and where anybody can walk into of the airport. Not like Chicago at all. In Chicago, I was able to sleep on the side the planes go in past the security check, and it's completely safe on that side. No, I wasn't able to sleep there this time. So, I remember, well, when I was in Chicago, really wasn't able to sleep all that much there as well, as I was scared since I was at my first time doing it. But in this case, even though it was much more dangerous, I just fell asleep on a bench for like 3 hours in a hard metal bench. And there was people around. People were grabbing their bags and stuff, and I just fell asleep on a bench, that metal bench, for 3 hours. I've never been that tired in my life. I woke up and I felt cold, as I usually do when I slept in the airports. And then I remembered, I was like, all right, I need to find a little bit more of a comfortable sleeping, or just kind of sleeping place, like half sleep or just relaxing place. So I looked around, and I just luckily found some, what would be the word for it? Not super sketchy looking people to sit by, and I just sat there the whole night. And I kind of fell asleep. I think I may have fell asleep there, but I was trying not to because I didn't want to. Had to wake up at 5 a.m. and I didn't want to sleep through that my flight. So then after that, at 5 a.m., I got up, went through TSA. I remember this is gonna sound odd, but I remember this room. It you can tell my memory is blurry at this point. There was this room with like fishes on the wall, like a fish wallpaper, and I just like stood in there for a little while. And I left, and then I walked to my gate, and I wanted to get food at that point. Um, none of the food places were open that early. So then I remember I rested at my terminal. That was actually a lot more comfortable because I was like just laying down on the carpet. And then my plane started boarding. I boarded my plane, and on the plane, it was a Spirit, by the way. People may tell you how uncomfortable Spirit is, right? But on Spirit, I was able to get much better sleep than Greyhound. Way better sleep. There was no bumps. Airplanes are much more like this. And on Greyhound, there's no table that comes down. So I was pretty much having to put my head and onto my legs and like sort of like this. And I slept like that the entire time, and it was extremely uncomfortable. On Spirit, I put down the table, I just put my head like this, and I fell asleep the entire flight. It was much better sleep than any of the other sleep I got. So if peop if somebody tells you Spirit's uncomfortable, think again. Greyhound is like 100 times worse than that. I'll tell you that much. I like Spirit. Spirit's affordable, and actually, a lot of the times the prices are cheaper. The only time Greyhound is usually cheaper than Spirit is if you're booking last minute, but Spirit is way more reliable than Greyhound, usually on time, meaning it's the seats aren't that bad, honestly. People may overgeneralize it, or they're just used to other airlines, but it's really not that bad as long as you can tolerate it. If you get a window seat or an aisle seat, that's the best. The middle seat, I will say, is a little bit more uncomfortable. And on this particular trip or this particular flight, I had the window seat, so I had the head on the table, and my head was just like on the wall, and it was really comfortable. I got um, and when I got back in my hometown airport, I knew I wasn't able to take this county bus back and save money, as I did that on my last flight from Chicago, and I remember I almost fell asleep in the bus as I was so tired. So I knew there was no way I would be able to take the county bus. I would just fall asleep. So I Ubered home. Uh, and it was $40, and I got home and I found my computer missing. And I was like, "Oh, crap, mom found out about this." And the roommate took away my computer, and I was so mad. I was like, "It's my life, mom." You know how much pain I went through? And she didn't care. She's like, "I don't want you doing that no more." I mean, I will agree it was extremely, probably the most unsafe things I've ever done in my life. But I think once your kid does that, if you have a kid, or if I had a kid and they did that, I would just realize my kid's a freaking daredevil, and I need to do more things that bring out that side of them. Because my mom doesn't really do much of that stuff with me, or ever, or even as a kid, she would always just take me to the beach. No, I almost never got to do anything like daredevilish, and that's what I am. I'm a daredevil. Um, my dad actually did more things for me in that respect. And I know that's more of an excuse, but I'm not going to get into the details of how mad I got over her taking away my computer, but I was mad. And anyways, that's pretty much the end of this story. And I will, in my word of advice is just don't use Greyhound. If you're 17 if and you wanna go take a trip to another city and see it, just fly and sleep on the airside part of the airport, and be careful which airport you pick. So if you're because all in city because a lot of some cities like Houston have a horrible public transportation, and I've never been to Houston, I just know. Um, and it's kind of hard for you to navigate the city without a car. A city I'd recommend if you ever wanna visit on your own, and it's not something your parents may tell you to do, but it would be Chicago. Chicago's extremely easy. There's this area in between Terminal 4 and 3 with really big seats, and it's so, comfortable to sleep in on the air side. Don't if you do this, though, don't cross don't cross the security check because on the other side of the airport where all the check-ins and the baggage claim is extremely unsafe to sleep in because homeless people go there. I will say though, in comparing the check-in area in Chicago compared to New Orleans, the New Orleans check-in area seemed a bit safer. I didn't see as many homeless people, and they weren't as like, "Hey, give me money" like that. But also, the big thing you have to take in is in New Orleans, the airport is much further away from the city compared to Chicago. So that probably has something to do with it. But the other thing I'll say is, let's say you do Chicago, and you fly in, you sleep the night airside. The cool thing is Chicago has really good public transportation, and you can just take the blue line from the airport to the downtown, and downtown pretty much has most of the tourist stuff all there. It's all in walking distance. I would just say, learn what you're where how to get to where the places you wanna go to because Chicago's an extremely easy city to get lost in. Not you don't have to worry so much about the hoods in Chicago because if you're going to downtown as the hoods are further away from the city, but just more so just know where you're going and especially when you take the L, which is Chicago's metro, just know what station you're getting off and on, and if you're going to a place like Wrigley Field, know what station you're getting off and getting on at there, because you don't wanna go the wrong way and end up in the hood. That is the only concern I will say, is just know where you're going, but it's very doable and it's very easy. Um But overall, I would probably advise most people not to even do that at 17 because it's so risky. I mean, I'll just say back then I just wanted to see these cities. I didn't know if you never know if you're gonna die before you turn 18. And I'm 18 now, but you just never know when you're gonna die. So it's like, why wait when you can just do this stuff now? Check some things off the bucket list. Um, but I mean, it just depends how much you really wanna do it and if you have the right opportunities and if you're willing to take the risks, and I obviously was. But I will say after the New Orleans trip, I didn't really do anything like that again or ever. I'm about to, but, in this case, I'm about to take a trip. I'm not gonna disclose the city. Um, but I'm actually staying at a hotel since I'm legally able to book hotels now and visiting friends, which probably makes the trip a whole lot better and everything. But the last thing I'll say is my trip to New Orleans probably was the most painful experience I've ever experienced in my entire life. I've never felt that amount of pain and tiredness in my entire life. And it was a level of and then the positive part is it's a level of consciousness that I've never experienced before. I've never experienced that amount of pain, and it put me into a new place, a new type of thinking that I never experienced before in my entire life. Not that I want to go back there, but it's something I can say I've experienced. and I never knew I was humanly capable of that type of conscious, this dream state almost, as I would explain it. A dream state, the brink of so much pain that you just kind of forget that you're even still in pain. And it's an experience that really makes me thankful that I have a bed to sleep on every night. It makes you, not take things for granted anymore. I don't take the bed I sleep on for granted anymore after that. And even the Chicago trip, I don't. I don't take for granted food. It really makes you just remember how important these things are that you may forget how important they are. So if you want a big life lesson, maybe do it, but well, the final risk that I was talking about earlier is if my bus through New Orleans was late and I missed my flight, I would have had to spend even more money that I probably didn't even have. And I would have been so screwed, and I would have to call my mom, then she'd get mad at me, and I would have been really, really screwed. Well, that's all I have to say about that. And as my final remarks, just enjoy life because we're all gonna die someday, whether you like it or not. Don't think you're gonna live forever because you're not. Trust me.